follow what we are doing before even getting his Twizy, and after that he can basically tell the story, his life with the Twizy, which is, I think, for something which is really a breakthrough disruptive.
Iraq legal advice was provisional. Tony Blair. Tony Blair has said he disregarded Lord Goldsmith's warning that attacking Iraq would be illegal without further UN backing because it was provisional. The ex-Prime Minister said he believed his top legal officer would change his opinion on whether a second UN resolution was needed when he knew the full details. His revelation came in a written statement to the Iraq inquiry. He is being questioned for a second time by the inquiry about his role in the lead-up to the 2003 war. He is being probed about the apparent discrepancies between what he told the committee last year and a recent statement to inquiry by his former Attorney General, Lord Goldsmith, who said he was uncomfortable about the statements made by Mr. Blair before the conflict. On January 14, 2003, Lord Goldsmith told Mr. Blair in a 6-page draft legal opinion that UN Security Council Resolution 1441, which declared Iraq in material breach of its obligation to disarm, was not enough on its own to justify the use of force against Iraq. Mr. Blair said in a statement to the inquiry, "I had not yet got to the stage of a formal request for advice, and neither had he got to the point formally giving it. So I was continuing to hold to the position that another resolution was not necessary." The former Prime Minister said he was aware of Lord Goldsmith's concerns about the legality of attacking Iraq. But he added, "I believe that he was abreast of the British, but most of all the US negotiating history conclude that 1441 meant what it said. Saddam had a final opportunity to comply. Failure to do so was a material breach, and that he revived the earlier resolution authorizing force." Mr. Blair was asked about a memo dated 30th January 2003 in which Lord Goldsmith repeated the resolution 1441 did not authorize the use of military force against Iraq on its own. A scribbled note next to his sentence in the former Prime Minister's handwriting says, "I just don't understand this." Referring to this comment, Mr. Blair said in his statement, "I did not understand how he could reach the conclusion that further decision was required when expressly we had refused such language in 1441. Mr. Blair issued a 26-page written statement in response to more than 100 detailed questions from the inquiry panel.
I think I got a JIC assessment in March 2002. We then went to see the Americans in Crawford in April, but this was evolving at quite a fast rate, and the question was, could we in a sense, this thing was going down a track towards a regime change, could we put it into a somewhat different track where you said ultimatum, and then a further different track where you said but through the UN? That was where...
South Korea rescues Samho jewelry crew from pirates. South Korean Navy commandos have stormed a cargo ship which had been seized by pirates in the South Arabian Sea. All 21 crew members of the South Korean-owned Samho jewelry were rescued, said Lieutenant Colonel Lee Sung-ho of the Joint Chiefs Staff. The Navy said 8 of the pirates had been killed and 5 captured. South Korea is part of the multinational anti-piracy patrol in the area. It had dispatched a warship after the vessel was seized on Saturday. The unprecedented rescue mission took place about 1,300 kilometers off the coast of Somalia and was described by Lieutenant General Lee as a perfect military operation. The 11,500-ton Samho jewelry had been carrying chemicals from the United Arab Emirates towards Sri Lanka when it was hijacked in the waters between Oman and India. In the U.S., path is sought for states to escape debt burdens. U.S. policymakers are working behind the scenes to come up with a way to let states declare bankruptcy and get out from under-crushing debts, including the pensions they have promised to retired public workers. Policymakers are working behind the scenes to come up with a way to let the states declare bankruptcy and get out from under-crushing debts, including the pensions they have promised to retired public workers. But proponents say some states are so burdened that the only feasible way out may be bankruptcy, giving Illinois, for example, the opportunity to do what General Motors did with the federal government's aid.
Numbers that illustrate why this is a needed tool for states to have at their disposal. The first number is $230 billion, the second number is $72 billion, and the third number is $3 trillion. $230 billion, that's the size of deficits states have faced over the last 2 years. This has been generated by unsustainable overspending. $72 billion, that's what states are projecting as another overspending generated shortfall for fiscal year 2012. Now that begins in July 1st of next year.
Iran nuclear talks underway in Istanbul. Major world powers have begun 2 days of talks in Iran over its controversial nuclear program. Diplomats meeting in Turkey are expected to revive a fuel swap plan where Iran gives up nuclear material in return for fuel for research reactor. US officials warned that a major breakthrough was unlikely. The West suspects Iran aims to build nuclear weapons and has imposed economic sanctions. Tehran insists its nuclear program is peaceful. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Baroness Ashton is heading a delegation from China, France, Germany, Russia, the UK and the US, aiming to get Iran to be more open about its nuclear ambitions. But Iran has repeatedly insisted that uranium enrichment will not be on the agenda, instead pushing such issues as global disarmament and Israel's suspected nuclear arsenal. Red Cross and MSF accused of helping Indian Maoists. Authorities in the central Indian state of Chhattisgarh say 2 international aid agencies are helping Maoist insurgents in the area. A senior police official said Medicines Sans Frontiers (MSF) and the International Committee of the Red Cross (ICRC) were facilitating treatments of rebels, and the agencies denied the charges. Oil pipeline leak causes mile-long slick near Mumbai. A leaking oil and gas pipeline has caused a mile-long slick off India's western coast, says the state-run Oil and Natural Gas Corporation (ONGC). The leak occurred in the Mumbai-Uran trunk of oil pipeline, and an ONGC spokesman described it as small. The leak, discovered at 8:45 a.m., was plugged after 2 hours and oil was diverted through another pipeline, the spokesman told the press reporters. Around 25,000 barrels of oil has been lost, he said. India court backs life term for Graham Staines murderer. The Indian Supreme Court has upheld the life sentence of a man convicted of killing Christian missionary Graham Staines and his 2 young sons in 1999. Prosecutors had argued that Dara Singh should face death, the sentence originally awarded by a lower court. Australian Graham Staines and his sons were burned alive by a mob in 1999 in a village in eastern state of Orissa where he worked with leprosy patients. We hope Mahatma Gandhi's vision of religion playing a positive development, integrating into prosperous nation will be realized, the judges said. There is no justification for interfering in someone's belief through force, conversion, or false promise that one religion is better than the other. Karbala bombs kills dozens during Shia commemorations. 2 mob attacks near the Iraqi city of Karbala have killed at least 50 people and injured more than 150, officials say. The blasts happened on 2 routes being used by pilgrims taking part in the Shia Muslim commemorations of Arba'in. Earlier, a suicide bomber killed at least 3 people in the central city of Barkuba, the second deadly attack in the city in as many days. Violence in Iraq has reduced in recent years, but attacks continue. We'll move on to the business world. India plans Asian tidal power first. The state of Gujarat is planning to host Asia's first commercial-scale tidal power station. The company Atlantis Resources is to install 50 megawatt tidal farm in the Gulf of Kutch on India's west coast, with construction starting early in 2012. The facility could be expanded to deliver more than 200 megawatt. The biggest operating tidal station in the world, La Rance in France, generates 240 megawatt, while South Korea is planning several large facilities. To claim the title of Asia's first, the Indian project will have to outrun developments at Shiva Lake, a South Korean tidal barrage under construction on the country's west coast. Atlantis' recent feasibility study in Gujarat concluded that the state had good potential for tidal exploitation. About 2.5 years ago, we ran a global study of tidal power resources and came up with some hotspots where resources seemed pretty well matched to the land, said Atlantis CEO Tim Cornelius. One of them was the Gulf of Kutch, and since then we have had wonderful support from the government, culminating in the announcement that the project was going ahead, he told news reporters. GE boasts Jeffrey Immelt to head new U.S. economic panel. U.S. President Barack Obama is to name Jeffrey Immelt, the boss of General Electric, as the head of a new economic advisory panel. The President's Council on Jobs and Competitiveness will replace the Economic Recovery Advisory Board that had been led by former Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker. Welcome to the world of science. Two edges of sickle cell diseases. A US-China team has shown that inhibiting signaling between adenosine and the adenosine 2B receptor in blood could prevent vascular occlusion and consequent organ damage in sickle cell disease. The researchers already are in talks with companies to run clinical trials of antagonists of the receptor. Sickle cell disease results from a mutant form of beta hemoglobin, HBB, that is prone to polymerization under hypoxic conditions, resulting in the collapse of red blood cells, RBCs, into a characteristic sickle shape. The sickle RBCs can block blood vessels to cause acute episodes, vascular-occlusive crisis of pain, ischemia, tissue necrosis, organ damage, and mortality. Hydroxyurea is the only approved drug to prevent vascular-occlusive crisis. However, the generic chemotherapy increases the risk of anemia, life-threatening infections, teratogenicity, and cancer. There is no therapies approved to treat vascular-occlusive crisis once they begin, and the precise molecular mechanisms underlying RBC sickling and vascular occlusion are poorly understood. To better understand those mechanisms and identify new disease targets, the US-China team looked for molecules in the blood that might drive RBC sickling. First, metabolomic screens showed that adenosine levels were higher in the blood of sickle cell disease patients and mouse models of the disease than in blood from healthy controls. To confirm the findings in humans, the team showed that a research-grade ADORA2B antagonist, PAB1115, decreased hypoxia-included sickling in RBCs from sickle cell patients compared with no treatment. A pegylated formulation of adenosine deaminase, PEG-ADA, which is an enzyme that metabolizes adenosine, generated similar results. In mouse models, PAB1115 or PEG-ADA also decreased RBC sickling compared with no treatment. Treated animals experienced less vascular occlusion and less damage to the lungs, liver, spleen, and kidneys than untreated controls. And in sports, Australian Open, Venus Williams and Justine Henin bow out. Venus Williams lasted just one match of her third round encounter in Australian Open before retiring. Andrea Petkovic won first game before Williams, with 7 Grand Slams behind her, felt the recurrence of a growing muscle injury and pulled out. Justin Henin had earlier lost to Svetlana Kuznetsova 6-4, 7-6, 10-8. The Belgian 11th seed champion in 2004 was outclassed in the first set and wasted a set point in second as Kuznetsova prevailed in 124 minutes. "I wanted to win so much and I am really happy to win," said the 23rd seed. Meanwhile, top seed Caroline Wozniacki saw the Dominika Cibulkova and 2008 champion Maria Sharapova beat Julia Georges. Friday's action on the Rod Laver Arena ended in anticlimactic fashion when Williams 30, who had never previously retired in a Grand Slam, gave up the ghost and 3-0 down in the second game against her Russian opponent. After stretching to the right in an attempt to return service, Williams cried out and clutched her stomach. The injury had picked up when the American defeated Sandra Zahlavova in her previous match. The standout encounter of the day's session saw Kuznetsova hand Henin her earliest exit at a Grand Slam event since Wimbledon 2005. And before we close today's bulletin of news analysis, let's have a recap of the main points. US shifts focus to press China for market access. Karzai postpones seating parliament, deepening Afghan crisis. Tunisian opposition pushes for coalition changes. Blackwater founders set to back mercenaries. Find Renault executive blames tricks by a rival. Iraq, legal advice was provisional, Tony Blair. And there we end today's bulletin of news analysis. Be with us in the coming weeks too. Thank you.